Hi everyone, this is Allan McKay. Welcome to episode 75. I'm speaking with Jason Scheier, who has worked for DreamWorks, Warner Brothers, Disney, you name it. He worked on a lot of really cool projects from Rise of the Guardians all the way through to Battlefield 4 and dozens of other really cool projects. A really amazing concept artist. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Allan McKay podcast. Allan is an Emmy Award-winning visual effects artist and mentor to many leading industry experts. Listen in as Allan talks with other industry leaders in film, video games, and visual effects about their experience, lessons, and methodology. Allan will teach you pivotal advice to fast-track your career, better your skills, and reach your ultimate dream job. Check out the latest episodes on allanmckay.com.
Hey, this is Allan. So just a quick thing to check out, www.vfxrates.com. This is a website that I created to solve a massive problem that we all have. What should we be charging? This is one of the giant mysteries that we all have and most people feel very uncomfortable talking about is what we should charge as a freelance rate. And the worst part is when we go to apply for a job, if we ask too much, we risk alienating the employer and never getting that call back. Whereas if we play it safe and ask too little, we not only get taken advantage of, but on top of that, we leave a lot of money on the table, which potentially over the span of a year can lead up to tens of thousands of dollars. So this is a chance for you to quickly go to the website, vfxrates.com, put in a few basic bits of information based on your city, your experience, your discipline, software, little factors that are very important to figuring out what you should be charging as your base rate when you're going to an employer. Now, this is based on a lot of research, but more importantly, it's based on a brain trust of industry experts from different fields that we've all pulled together and being able to maintain this as a very accurate way to generate what you should be charging. The best part is not only what you should be charging, but also potentially what you could be charging by tweaking a few things to how you present yourself, building your brand, learning to negotiate better. Also, other factors like building an irresistible reel, learning to approach employers the correct way, learning to network, a lot of other factors. I want to share all this information for free. Go to www.vfxrates.com and find out what you should be charging for your hourly VFX rate. All right, so I'm going to keep this pretty short. This episode is with Jason Scheier, who is freaking awesome. I loved doing this episode. I got to say that I hadn't met or spoken with Jason before this, and I'd mentioned this before in the last episode. This definitely reminded me a lot of Ash Thorpe, just in terms of someone who is really inspiring, really hard worker, manages to do so much, and it's through pure passion, dedication, and hard work, and a lot of crazy skill and talent as well. Jason's worked on a lot of really cool projects, a huge diverse background, doing projects like Battlefield 4, Rise of the Guardians. He's worked for Warner Brothers, Disney, DreamWorks, you name it. And the cool thing is that I really enjoyed the fact that I kind of figured out what I wanted to talk about initially, and we pretty much threw that out the window and dove into a lot of really cool stuff. I found this to be really inspiring, and just in general, I feel like I got to know Jason really well, just getting to talk about a lot of his achievements, and also just the way that he's kind of approached life, his career, everything. Just a really genuine person as well as genuine artist. Yeah, I loved it. I think this is really cool. I hope that you get a lot from it. I definitely did. I don't want to hold this up. I just want to get right into this episode. I think it's going to be really great. So let's rock this out. Lastly, if you want to check out the show notes, just go to allanmckay.com/75. So ALLANMCKAY.com. So allanmckay.com/75 to check out the show notes for episode 75. Lots of great quotes and links to all the stuff that we discuss, things like that. Check it out. Thanks again for doing this. And Jason, if you want to give a quick introduction and tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, man. I've been an artist for a really long time now. I feel like it's something that I started when I was a kid. So like most artists, they have these like talks and they say, hey, I got started when I was a child. I started drawing with crayons and pencils. It was kind of really the same for me. So that's a really good question. Mm-hmm. As far back as I can recall, I always loved art. And I think I drew every day as a kid from my imagination. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of cool, like just being able to create my own, almost like little kid IPs with my brother.
I like that.
I have an identical twin brother. I don't know if you know this.
No.
And my identical twin, when we were kids, we would both draw together, and we would play with Legos, and we were always creating together. So we were obsessed and kind of interested in drawing together, which both gave us both like a competitive edge for the rest of my life, because he kind of got that started in me when I was a little guy. And then as I got older and older, that competitive edge never really died. I always wanted to create and like outdo him. And it was kind of funny because later on, my brother went into medicine. And he was like, dude, my brother just keeps kicking my ass at art. So I'm going to, do something else. And he has a very three-dimensional, like technical mind. Like he was always a better artist than I was. He can draw like crazier line work, and he was always very meticulous. And I was a little sloppy until I got to high school. And that's when I pursued art seriously, is because I would never forget my first like drafting classes when I was using rulers and doing like precise measurements. That's when I learned perspective and like designing, understanding forms. So that was kind of cool, So I became obsessed with perfect draftsmanship and exacting lines. And I think for me, like ceramics class really helped me discover different mediums translating into like three-dimensional forms, And then instead of following directions making pottery, I would just like create buildings from clay and like, make weird like creatures and stuff. And my freshman teacher encouraged me with my imagination, which was kind of cool.
That's really awesome.
Yeah, man. It was like, how you meet mentors along the way? She was my first real mentor. Her name was Donna Banning, and she was a teacher at Art Center College of Design in Pasadena. And I was always like terrified of that school. I was like, that school is super crazy. Everybody there is like insanely good. I probably won't even be able to make it there. And it was something that she told me I could do. And so I just kept it in the back of my mind, but I never really went after it. So instead of, getting discouraged, I got encouraged by her. And then it made me basically pursue my career in entertainment design from that one class in freshman year. So
cool.
It was pretty cool. And then after high school, I wanted to study at CalState Fullerton, where I focused on foundation drawing and sculpture and painting. So I did a lot of like, just painting and drawing, like tons of painting and drawing and 3D work where I was building stuff with my hands. And I only ended up there for like a year. And then I heard that there was a media arts program that just started up at Orange County called the Art Institute of California, Orange County.
Man, you're getting the full tour of duty in SoCal.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly, Alan. I mean, like, I felt like I needed to try all of the junior colleges and meet as many teachers as I could while I was still young and still wanted to learn, because I felt like a lot of people I know just would go right out of high school into their final focus, and then that was it. They just kind of like got stuck on this almost like in a pigeonhole.
Right.
So I didn't want to pigeonhole myself. I wanted to go to like lots of different junior art colleges and study as many different forms of art as possible. So I was like studying ceramics, and I was studying little bit of like actual fine arts painting for a long. Actually, it was like for like 2 years in junior college. And I met two mentors there. One was Jay Sagan, who passed away at the beginning of this year. Amazing guy. Like, he was a minimalist, which is completely different than what you and I do, because we're very detailed people. And it was crazy, dude. Like, he would just literally paint a canvas solid black and then like paint a red dot on it. And then that was his painting. But There's something about his process where he would just literally layer upon layer upon layer different forms onto the canvas. And it was more of the textural quality of the canvas that inspired me than it was the actual subject matter, if that makes sense. And that was actually kind of cool. Like, I got a chance to see that type of thinking, where instead of being so obsessed with perfect draftsmanship, I saw this guy that was just able to be like, oh, blah, blah. Like, he literally called black paint buckets of death. And then he called the red paint bucket of blood. It's so funny.
Kind of morbid. That's
yeah,
cool,
kind of morbid. I liked it though. It was cool, because as a younger artist, I'm sure you were drawing weird shit too, like dragons, monsters.
Nothing like super bad, but you know what I mean.
Okay.
I
think I was a little bit dark myself.
Sorry, just when I think of people like drawing weird shit, I always think of Superbad. Where the guy is just like obsessed with drawing dicks for a full year.
I mean, that wasn't me, but I mean, it was definitely. I kept some weird shit in my lunch pail, that's for sure. It was more than just gremlins. I was drawing some strange things, but that teacher helped me kind of loosen up, which was why I wanted to mention him. And he was a huge guy to me in terms of mentorship. And
what was his
later
name
on? His name is Jay Sagen, Sagen.
Cool.
Really cool guy, and he taught for I think he taught for like 40 years, and he literally passed away at the end of last year, early this year, and he left behind like a huge legacy at Coastline College and Santiago Canyon College and CalState Fullerton. He taught everywhere, all over Orange County, which was kind of cool. That's cool. Then from there, I met Mora Han, Moira Han, and she's a Japanese watercolorist. And, you know, she's a white lady, but she is the most Japanese white lady you'll ever meet. Like, she's obsessed with samurais in anthropomorphic forms, like, cool stuff, man. Like, tigers fighting.
I was going to quickly say, like, you don't meet many other cultures where they're, like, you get people who are obsessed with a specific culture, but when it comes to Japan, it's like people own that shit, you know? So
they do, man.
But yeah, I mean, but in a way, it's completely understandable. I mean, both from, like, the art coming out of Japan is amazing, and just the larger than life kind of I guess vibe of Japan, especially Tokyo in general, is one that I can understand why people do go crazy for it. But, you know, you don't hear people going like, oh yeah, I'm that person's like batshit crazy for Pakistan or for Australia or whatever, you know, but it's always Japan for sure. But that's
cool.
It
is, man. No, absolutely. No, thanks, man. I think that was what really got me like whirlwinding down that rabbit hole, was learning about how much she knew about Japan and about the anthropomorphic qualities of yokai, you know, like the old ghost stories and the folklore and stuff. Just made me obsessed with that too as well. So that kind of started to trickle into my artwork later on, actually more so now than it did when I was younger, when I first met her, because I didn't want to take something from her. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to like compete with your teacher or your mentor.
Right.
You want to learn from them. And so I just watched her, you know, create these pieces, and it was like, wow, that's really inspiring. I want to do that maybe later on when I know more about creating art, when I know the skill sets behind, you know, and not mastery, but just kind of always being a student of life and like getting better every single day.
Yeah.
And if you get to know me, Allan, like my mentality is like, I'm always learning, and like, I never really fucking know everything, man. Like, I think everybody needs to like humble themselves.
Yep.
I think a lot of artists out there think they know everything. They're already masters. And that's the last thing I consider myself. I want to be like, you know, 90 years old, still learning. And,
be a student
hopefully
of life.
if that's, yeah, exactly, man. Student of life. So that's my mentality about art in general and like creating. And then just to kind of go down the road, like I ended up studying animation, and I learned from Art Leonardi, who's a great mentor of mine, who drew the Pink Panther, and like he was a traditional 2D animator, and then I went from 2D animation into 3D animation, and that's where I just like went crazy in love. I was like, dude, 3D animation is absolutely amazing. The stuff that you could do with visual effects, and I was learning Maya when I was in school there, and I actually learned a lot of digital tools and pushed my foundation skills into those traditional tools. So I kind of knew how to design already from going to all these little junior art colleges.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just made it that much easier for me. I actually kind of had a little bit of an edge over the other artists there, because like I was telling you before, Allan, like those guys were like straight out of high school. Right. So they didn't have that time to like kind of flounder around and study different things. And so it helped me a lot understanding sculpture and how things are built from the inside out and seeing through forms and stuff like that. So it really helped me get through school quickly. And then after that, I was like, dude, what do I do? Like, I thought I was going to be a 3D environment artist, because that's what all the artists that were coming out of AI were doing.
So how old were you at that point?
I was like 26, dude. I was a late bloomer.
No, that's so cool. And we'll talk more about that. But like, I think it's fucking cool that, you weren't in that race where, actually, yeah, I'll quickly go into it. But like, yeah,
sure.
You're not in that race to get out there and get your foot in the door and kind of go the general avenue of just like quitting the learning too soon and going straight into, okay, now I know enough, I'm going to go out and be the man. Instead, like I love the fact that not only were you able to take your time and learn and appreciate the art, but you're not saying, okay, I'm a illustrator or I'm a 3D guy or whatever. You're actually learning all these other areas, from ceramics to sculpture to all these other things, that all of them are going to help make you a better artist and make you, like line drawing. It's going to help you have a better understanding of perspective and all these things that later will benefit you. So, I think that's great. It's so powerful to actually say, you know what, I'm going to actually learn my art. And if you touch on kind of Japanese tradition of like if you learn something, you learn it to death, and you become that is the one thing that you take on, and you be the best you can at that one thing. So for you being an artist, it's like, well, I'm not going to like skim the manual and then go out into the world. It's like I'm going to learn and understand it and appreciate it from like every different perspective. So I love that.
Absolutely, man. No, you said you hit the nail right on the head right there. Like, I didn't want to rush into anything. And I feel like, in a way, it wasn't a cop-out, because I did study medicine, too. When I was in school, I studied biology, and I actually thought I might go into the illustration side of medicine and do, anatomical breakdowns.
Right.
And my dad's like, dude, my dad's a doctor, and he's like, they've done all of those already. Like, it's every single book, Albinius on anatomy, and all these great anatomy books have been done and explored and like kind of analyzed to death in a way.
Yeah.
And so I was like, you know what, maybe that's not for me. Maybe, and I was always finding myself drawing in my biology classes, like drawing the brain and drawing the heart. And so the teacher's like, dude, you're really good. Like, you shouldn't be here. Like, and so it actually pulled me out of that class in a way. And having all these odd jobs, I didn't tell you this already, but I started working when I was 14, and I worked in a McDonald's and Taco Bell and all these crappy places like UPS. I worked at FedEx, all these crazy jobs just to get so many different views of the world in a way. And I was like, and my parents are both very hardworking people. So my mom's an OBGYN / like perinatal nurse, and my brother's a nurse anesthetist, and my dad's a general physician.
So sorry, just to jump in. So like your brother grew up with you as an artist, but what did he move into?
He is an anesthesia nurse. So he puts patients this. Yeah.
So you're literally the only person in the family that decided, you know what, fuck this, I'm going to be an artist. I'm going to draw for a living. Screw it.
Totally the black sheep of the family. Like, they've even my dad was actually really upset at me because, he gave me all these tools. Like, he was constantly quizzing me on like biology and, the understanding of the human body. And I just was like, Dad, I'm sorry, but I draw. That's what I do. And he never really believed in me until later on when I got my first gig. And he was like, dude, like, you did it. Like, I can't believe it. And I actually silenced him, and now he's like super proud of me.
That's great.
Which makes me excited as like a kid inside, because like the little kid's always been dancing around like, I'm going to please my dad. I'm going to prove him wrong. And then my mom was always the one rooting for me. She drew a little bit herself, but she was like, do anything you want and go full crazy on that and just make it the best thing you could possibly do. And I was like, that's great. My mom was always very encouraging. And same with my bro. My bro knew I can draw, so he's like, just keep going after it. You'll get it. Just keep going, going.
That's cool.
But I don't know about you, Alan. Did you ever have like a dark place where you felt like you can't do it and you were getting stuck and in that like weird rut?
Yeah, every day. But no, like I've kind of publicly spoken a lot about that, just because it's only been the last couple of years that I realized that a lot of other people are going to struggle with the same thing. And for me, in my early career, I mean, I got into doing 3D art and video games and a lot of that stuff very early in my career. And around 14, I started working, and and like I definitely had that spike of like big career success for 2 years, and then like nothing for a good year and a half or so. And it's definitely like a lot of, for me, it was definitely like 24 hours a day. I would be trying to get out there, and everyone telling me you can't do it, and you're too young, and all the things that you would kind of hear from the poisonous people that you shouldn't have in your life. But
toxic goodness.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like for the longest part, that was always like something I had to kind of fight and prove everyone wrong and be like, no, I'm going to keep at it. I'm going to make it. But there's definitely times where I was ready to give up and be like, okay, I'll go do what everyone said and go get a legit job. I will say that I actually, when my career was going really well at about 16, I ended up quitting all that to go work at KFC because all my friends had jobs at McDonald's and Pizza Hut and all these other food chains, and here I was working in an office, like an adult, and I just wanted to kind of have the life that my friends had, which was they go to school and they have a crappy job and they get paid crappy money. So I went from earning like $40K a year to going to work part time at KFC, being a cook in the back
Mhm.
So, I do think it's kind of interesting though, because you get to appreciate that side of life, which is a lot more hard work and usually
Yeah,
for
man.
not much money. But it's something that if you don't have that, if you're someone who goes straight from school to, earning a lot of money and doing 3D and, visual effects like 3D in general, or our whole industry can be kind of cushy if you want to take that route of just being like, cool, I get to drink free soda and eat all the candy I want and talk to my buddies
Yeah,
and occasionally do some work. You know,
right.
Otherwise, if you have that mentality of like, okay, that's great, but I'm going to go further and push myself, then I think those who've kind of had a bit of a outside perspective on everything else, it really aids them in realizing that, like, you got to work hard. It isn't an easy path, and
Absolutely.
the easy path is seductive and being like lazy rather than saying, okay, well, if I push myself, I can actually get to my goals.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Like you actually sound like you've been through a lot of the same pitfalls that I have. Like right out of school when I graduated from I was like, oh my God, like nobody's hiring me. I was sitting, I literally like shotgunned my art out to everyone as soon as I graduated, and it like fell on deaf ears. Like nobody was like, no, this guy's not ready, And in my head, I was ready because I had been through all this schooling, and it was a really tough time for me because it was like before the whole change in the marketplace. Like how the stock market crashed and the housing market balloon exploded and everything went down south. That was before that, and I wasn't getting work. So to me, it was like crazy talk. I was like, how am I not getting a job? So then I was like, I got to go back to school. I said, you know what? Maybe I don't know enough. And that's when I started studying at Art Center. I went down there like literally 2 or 3 weeks after I wasn't getting hired anywhere. And I said, hey, I'm interested. I'm a 26-year-old guy. I just want to, get a further education, and I want to learn entertainment design. And I was already drawing a lot, so that was the best fit for me, was entertainment. And that was when Scott Robertson was still there at Art Center. And I don't know if you know Scott. He's a really amazing foundation designer.
No, I don't.
He's really great. Check out his stuff. It's Scott Robertson. And he was like, hey, dude, I got a spot for you here. And how about, since you already have your bachelor's degree, your bachelor's of science, why don't we try to put you in a master's program here? So I was like, wow, this is really crazy. I can start getting my master's degree and then get like a higher education studying entertainment design.
That's cool.
And he put me underneath the grad ID program, which is for graduates studying industrial design. But then my focus was going to be on entertainment, which was kind of cool. And I started doing that for like a year, and I studied literally night and day, just drawing, painting, doing digital painting. I started, Photoshop back at AI, and I started hitting it really hard and like creating a new portfolio, and literally deleted everything on my hard drive that was associated with the old school. I was like, I'm going to completely reinvent myself.
That's cool.
And it was great, man.
It
And like
balls.
a year later, yeah, it does. It was scary. And I heard this analogy about like being stranded on this like buoy, right? And you have this like huge rope that goes out into the ocean, and you can either pull on it really hard, or you can let it kind of be loose and just let it flow. And I chose to be like the one that let it flow, and just kind of like, instead of letting it get all taut and tight, I was like, I'm just going to let things hit me and just wait for those doors to open for me. And that's when my first gig came along, and I got literally my first job was for this company called Involve, which was a virtual reality company back in the day. This is like when VR was just starting up.
So it's in the 90s? Or?
It was 2000s, but it was like
Okay.
2007, like when it was very, very early days VR.
Right. Okay. Because I remember the 90s was like, VR is going to be amazing. And then,
Yeah, it's true.
1995, it's like, VR is gone.
Exactly. No, it wasn't that time. It was like the second coming, I should say,
Yep.
of VR, when it started to take itself a little seriously. And the technology kind of had caught up with the idea.
Mhm.
It wasn't like Lawnmower Man anymore. It was like actually something that was a little bit more
I
serious.
swear I want to dig that movie up soon and watch it.
Yeah, dude.
It's probably best
You
left
should watch
in my memories than watching it again.
I know, right? Actually, most Stephen King movies hold up somehow. I don't know how, but they do.
Yeah, you're
It's a
right.
good-
I watched Pet Sematary not too long ago. I'm like, it's still pretty awesome.
It's still freaking creepy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that was cool. I got that first job, and then they made me the lead concept designer on that project. Doing stuff for NBC Universal, and I did stuff for Honda and Saab when Saab was still around, and lots of cool little tiny gigs creating these virtual spaces for these big companies.
Mhm.
And that was neat because I got a chance to do like themed architecture in a virtual space. And so that got me really interested in video games. And then from there, my friend saw what I was doing with that VR stuff. And he's like, hey, dude, come over to, at the time it was called Shiny Entertainment. And they had done all these movie games like the Matrix game when Matrix first came out, and like Silent Hill. And then they partnered up with Obsidian, which is another company, and they became their own company, which is called, it was called The Collective, not Obsidian. It was The Collective, and Shiny got together and made a baby, and they called themselves Double Helix. Mm-hmm. And then that's when I was like, really learning concept art. I had a cool lead named Sean O'Daniels, and he was showing me all the ins and outs and the quick tips in Photoshop. And like people started to hear my name in the industry at that point because I got my first job in a game job,
Yep.
And so I got my first job there. And then like 6 months later, I got a call from DreamWorks. And I was like, whoa, this is crazy. This is film. I'm really excited. And I forgot, but when I was, shotgunning my artwork out there, I went to, I believe it was SeaGraph. Mm-hmm. And I gave DreamWorks Animation my portfolio, like my hardbound portfolio. And I said, just keep this.
Wow.
It's yours. Like right when I got out of school. And I never heard from it. It was like 6 months later, they called me and they're like, dude, like, we love your stuff. Why don't you come in for an interview? And I was like shaking in my pants, it was like so exciting. And I told my job at the time, sorry guys, I just like told them I was sick and went to the interview and like I showed him my portfolio, and my first guy I interviewed with was named David James, and he had like been a production designer on Road to El Dorado and all these Sinbad. Cool. And he was production designing Monsters vs. Aliens at the time, and he's like, I love your portfolio. Where did you come from? You're like a anomaly, enigma, because he had never heard my name, he had never seen my portfolio, and I was kind of like the old guy that went to Art Center and then like skated past all the the spotlights everybody else had been through. And so it was really flattering that he liked my work, and he said, we're going to give you a call. And then another guy came in the office and interviewed me named Hamid, and now he's the producer on House of Cards. And this guy was producing Kung Fu Panda at the time, and he was like, dude, I'm going to fight over you. I want you on our show.
That's great.
So it was really wonderful, like to finally be fought over instead of like rejected. Mm-hmm. And I felt like I had something going now, and I got pulled onto that show. I literally gave him my month's notice. I was really respectful. Anywhere I work at, I always give them like a month's notice. Yeah. And then I was like, I'm going to move out of here in months and start working for DreamWorks. And I was actually really surprised with how respectful they were about that. They're like, dude, that's a great opportunity for you. They were going to give me a raise and try to keep me, but they're like, go, man, like have fun, man, enjoy yourself. And honestly, when I landed over at DreamWorks, that's when my career started to explode. That's when things started to get really exciting for me, I think.
That's really cool. No, I love that. And I don't know, for me, I always find like, there's so much you can learn, but it's still, as soon as you kind of find that one place that, for me, like there was a place that I've been working in the industry for about 5 or 6 years, and then I went to work at this one place in Sydney, Australia, and my first 2 weeks there was pretty much throw everything I've learned out the window, and just being around other people that just help you grow into a better artist. Just the stuff you learn and the way it pushes you and inspires you is, there's always that one place that you kind of get that massive growth in the beginning.
Yeah, man,
that's really cool. And
that's awesome.
I was just kind of curious, like you mentioned before about going to Pasadena and being like super intimidated prior to going there, just because there was so many great people there. But when you actually arrived there, I guess it's a two-part question, but one, did you realize it isn't as intimidating as you thought? I guess is the first part.
You're right. I did realize that later on, and I think it was my imagination was playing tricks on me, because I had gone there briefly to South Campus, which was at the bottom of the hill, and it was like this wind tunnel building they just started, doing art in and studying there. And that building, when I was younger, seemed crazy. It was like, what is this place? It's like this wind tunnel that people are learning art in, and it's like so fascinating. And then I went to the main campus and I saw a little bit more fine arts there. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, this is totally obtainable. This is stuff I'm doing already and actually probably executing a little better in a way. And then I was like, okay, this is okay. I can do this. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. No, that's cool.
It wasn't as scary, like the big scary monster I had made it out to be.
Yeah, because like I've been thinking about this a lot lately, just in terms of like what are the big struggles that most people have when they want to break into the industry.
Right.
And I think that most people, they kind of put this idea on the, I'll use the metaphor of the pedestal, but they make something out to be a way more glorious and bigger than it actually is. And a lot of the times it's like, well, I can never go work at wherever, ILM or Digital Domain or wherever it is, Pixar, because
Sure.
they everyone there is superhuman, and I'm not worthy of that. And the thing is, like,
Yeah.
obviously over time you get better and you progress, but most people kind of end up giving up too soon because they think, well, I'll never be good enough for that sort of thing, and
Right.
they don't even try in the end, just because they kind of build it up to a too great a thing to ever be able to accomplish. So
That's so true. It's definitely something. I'm an instructor now at this point. I've been teaching for a good 10 years, and all of my students say the same exact thing. Like, I can't do it, and I will not do it. It's the mentality, dude.
mhm.
It's literally it's something that's embedded in all of our genetic codes, where we start using a vocabulary that says I cannot do it or I'm not able to do it. And as soon as I tell them stop saying I can and can't and say can, change their vocabulary around, they start doing it.
Mhm.
And it's something that I did in myself. And I was in a really dark place when I wasn't getting hired. I was actually really depressed, dude. I was like, this blows. Like, I'm working so hard at this day and night, and nobody gives a living damn if I'm alive or dead. And then you find that person that actually says, hey, you have something here. You can do this. Just keep going, and don't let anybody tell you can't. And that's when you start to turn a new leaf.
Yeah.
That's when the light starts to shine. Start seeing the silver lining again.
Yeah, that's really great. I mean, I totally agree. Most people, I think that they like to stay in the comfort zone. I always say you got to be in it to win it, and it's because if you're not trying, then you're not going to get that goal. And if you try, then you may fail, or you never know.
Yeah.
6 months later, they might give you a call. But if you're not even sending your portfolio in, or you're not even speaking to people, or trying to do anything at all, then it definitely isn't going to happen. So that's the one way to kind of seal your fate. I always think that, like, most people, whenever they want to do something great, they just before they go to try, they kind of convince themselves that they're going to fail at it. And a lot of
Yep.
times I've found, like, just asking people, like, what's the worst that could happen, and actually having people think about, like, what are the worst things. Like, a lot of the time it's the walls that they build don't even make sense, they're not logical, but because they're not even
Yeah.
challenging them, they never actually kind of look at the wall like, oh, actually, does that even make sense? And a lot of the
Yeah.
time it could be like, okay, I want to go do a talk, in front of a bunch of people, which some people, it might be, scare them shitless, or go apply for a job somewhere. It's like, what's the worst that can happen if you send your reel in? They don't give you the job, whereas in your head, you're probably like, I'm going to get laughed at and ridiculed, and I'll get banned from the industry, or whatever kind of
Yeah.
illogical things come up in your mind. And when you actually think about it, like, well, is that stuff actually plausible? It's like, no, actually, none of that's rational. If anything, I send my work in and they don't like it, then at least the next time I send it in, they're probably going to be able to compare how much I've grown over the period since the last time I sent my work in. So it's just
Definitely.
one of those things that people will build up these walls, and yeah, it's just like most of the time, like, it's really irrational fears that they've built up that in reality make no sense. But if you don't challenge that and try, then you'll never realize how silly half those excuses you make actually are.
No, that's so true, man. Those are all really great points. That's awesome. Yeah.
So when you went to Pasadena, I'm just, this is the second part of it, but I was kind of curious, like, again, because I love the fact that you were saying that there's, like, these super talented people, and initially you had that kind of hesitation of, like, not being worthy. But
Yeah.
when you got there, did you kind of find, like, for me at least, like, I love to surround myself with people better than me, because I think there are certain types of people that get really intimidated and threatened by having better people or equal people to you. But for me, like,
Yeah.
I think that the best thing to do is to always be the bottom of the barrel. Like, to put yourself in a place where
Definitely.
you're out of your depth, because they're going to pull you up rather than pull you down. So being around
Yeah.
people that were doing really crazy shit, like, and the same thing with DreamWorks too. I mean, did you find that
Yeah.
accelerated your learning and your
Oh,
ability?
definitely, man. Like, honestly, DreamWorks was the place more so than Art Center for me, because the first hallway I walked down was Kung Fu Panda hallway, and these guys print their artwork big, dude. Like, it's literally one painting on a wall, and there's like 7 paintings walking down a hallway, and they're gigantic, beautiful, fully rendered illustrations with like tons of characters, tons of focal points, just like I mean, these things are like blockbuster huge paintings, and it was so intimidating. I felt like this little tiny little ant, walking down hum-da-dum-da-dum down this hallway, and like there was gods on either side of me, and I got to my room and I was like, oh my God, I got to create work that looks substantial enough to be printed and like hung in these hallways and to inspire the team. And that was really intimidating, dude. Like these are people that were veterans, they've been there for 20 years. The Christian Shellowalds and the Richie Siciliacs and the Ramon Zebox, these guys are like legends in art over at DreamWorks, and they came from places like CalArts and Art Center, and they were like the old guard when illustration was like serious business. And you see these guys' sketchbooks, and it puts any of my final drawings to shame. Like they're keeping journals on them all the time and drawing all the time, and they're just so prolific. Nathan Fowkes, for example, is one of the guys that's going to be at the IMAG master class
with him. It was really cool.
Right, yeah. I walked into life drawing with him, and he's like sitting there doing this like beautiful like charcoal drawing of this like figure in front of me, and I was like, "Are you kidding me? This place is amazing," And so that was when I literally like let my heart just kind of absorb all that warmth and love from all those artists around me, and like let them be my mentors. And I got some great instruction from Mike Hernandez, and also from Mike Isaac, and all these great artists, Ronald Kerniawan, who's my production designer today. These guys were all great illustrators and designers in animation that were showing me kind of the ropes, and saying Tim Lamb, who's a production designer now, an art director now at DreamWorks. These guys were all just really giving me what I needed to know, the golden nuggets of illustration that I didn't learn in school. And so I totally agree with you. Like, surround yourself by the greats and allow yourself to be the little minuscule mouse in the room and just learn from them, because that's how you get better.
Yeah,
it really is.
And that's just it. Like, I think some people are kind of afraid of going into those situations because they don't want to be, belittled or humbled. But that's the thing, is like, that's exactly, as you said, being a student of life. Like, you want to learn, you want to grow. And I don't know, it drives me crazy whenever I do meet people who kind of think that they have like reached the pinnacle of like all they can do. It's just like, fuck off, man. Like,
right.
Are you 100? Because I don't think that there's always room to grow. And that's cool. Man. I think that's actually a good perspective to have, is kind of like, rather than coming in looking from the outside, more kind of seeing all these amazing people and thinking, okay, I've arrived, I've come home, and this is a place that I belong, and I can kind of nurture myself and grow with everyone else. So I mean, yeah, right. I think that's really cool. And
I think teaching for me too as well. Sorry to cut you off, Alan. I wanted to add that I think teaching for me has been the most instrumental part of my kind of educational experience. As much as people don't realize this, it's actually more beneficial to the teacher sometimes than it is to the student.
Yep.
Because I'm getting inspired by my students, because some of them are better than I am, dude. Mm-hmm. Like, they come out of out of high school drawing like masters, and it's like, dude, you're amazing. Like, you're like a baby sergeant, or you're like a little Michelangelo. What the hell? What's going on here? And that would inspire me. And on top of that, I get to review the information.
Yep.
Constantly.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
That's where I grew the most. I was like, okay, let's do observational painting. And in my intro to digital painting classes I taught at Concept Design Academy with Kevin Chen, I was drawing from life, still lifes. I would set them up in the class and do like 3-point lighting setups and just sit there and paint with my students. And they would watch what I was doing, and I watch what would do it. And we would just like, all that creative energy would be in that room, and we would all grow from each other. And some of my students were better than I was. I'm not going to lie. Like, there were some great artists in there. And that's what made me better, was because I was like, oh, you're really good. And like, what are you doing? How are you figuring this out so quickly? And I would grow from their knowledge and some of the shortcuts they were taking, or like the different train of thought that they had. And then we were all kind of doing the same exercise over and over and over again. And then eventually we were all so quick together as a class. And, in 14 weeks, we were all like killing it, and then of course you take a break for, 4 months between classes, and then you get sloppy again. And you got to start all over again,
Yep. Yep.
But it's always hard, it's always a challenge, but it's great to have that review as an instructor to learn, keep getting sharper at what you do.
Yeah, I think that it forces you to really kind of regurgitate that information. So in a way, to present it to other people, you really need to process it yourself. And that's really valuable too, is just because, I think that when you learn something, you kind of instinctively be like, all right, I get it. But when you actually got to then translate it to the rest of the world, then it's like, okay, well, now I really got to understand it and go through it enough that I can explain it to others. And I think that's like a really valuable way to force yourself to learn something a lot more beyond just kind of, skimming the pages and getting the gist of something.
Absolutely, man.
That's cool.
Yep.
And I thought it was kind of fascinating that you're mentioning that you had a twin and the two of you were kind of pushing each other, because I don't know, I grew up in a school where I don't know what was in the water, but like everyone had a twin. And
crazy.
Yeah, it was, because I think there was about 6 people in my grade that all had twins, and it was nuts. And but yeah, like I grew up a lot with like people who like both usually as brothers, but sisters as well. Like we're all artists, and it's not like one or the other. It's like both of them would be pushing each other and kind of really playing on that kind of challenging mentality with each other. Like someone I used to date, she's over at Weta. She has a twin sister who's an art director, and the two of them would push each other through high school, like really bettering each other by kind of pushing the boundaries and being very competitive. Maybe
that's excellent.
Yeah, like but at the same time, like I've got 2 friends of mine. They're directing their first feature at the moment, and they grew up together as designers in Sydney as motion graphics designers. Completely different style, and I thought that was really cool.
Awesome.
But they would push each other all the time. They were both doing amazing stuff, and they would collaborate on summer stuff, and like they became a package that everywhere they went. They eventually moved to New York and started directing, and their company was twin, just because like it wasn't like one or the other. They were together, and but I just found that growth was really important. And same thing, I worked with the Spirig brothers who did Daybreakers. They're doing a new Saw. I don't know why, but I looked them up yesterday on IMDb. Like, what are they up to? And it's like, oh, you're making Saw. Okay, well, I guess everyone needs to make $1. But we did like a bunch of movies together, and again,
nice.
More twins who having that kind of art background. I found like, I think it's just really cool, kind of seeing that growth where you're not in it alone, and you also got someone who, in a way, you can compete with, and it's always going to be friendly competition, but it's really going to make you, push yourself a lot more than probably anyone else could, because it's someone that knows you better than anyone on the outside.
I love that. That's great, man.
Did you find that too?
Yeah, I find that too as well. I mean, we pushed each other like crazy, and we still do. Like I'll talk to him, maybe like once a week, and he'll say, "Hey, man, what are you doing for your health?" Or are you keeping in shape? Or he's always driving me in some type of a way to like become a better person as an individual, and that's what I love about my brother.
That's cool.
And it's like having a built-in best friend.
Yeah.
And that's the inspiring thing about having someone that like literally we like broke from the same egg. We're like single-celled mitosis. This is awesome.
Yeah.
So it's cool. I totally agree with you. I think it's something that stays with you for the rest of your life. It continues with you until you're an adult.
That's cool. That's really cool. And I guess like for you, I mean, that's definitely been kind of the underlying theme, is that you've had a lot of mentors. And I love that too, because again, it says so much about you, how humble you are, that you are always able to kind of go in under others and learn and appreciate what they're able to contribute to you. What do you think is like the key to kind of finding mentors? Because again, like you can never go out to someone and say, "Hi, I want you to be my mentor.
Exactly.
Please be a burden. Make me a burden on your life." So like, how is it for you that you found such a high success rate with finding people to kind of study under?
For me, it's just been being an admirer of them, and not coming in as like the super geek and like asking them for all this information or advice. I literally treat them like a person. And, I'm in, same for example, it's in the workplace. On the day-to-day, I'll ask them, "Hey man, you want to grab some coffee sometime or just chat about life?" And for me, I get a better holistic idea of who that person is as an individual by asking them what they do on a day-to-day basis versus what they do in art. And that's when I make a breakthrough usually with people, is like just literally and genuinely wanting to know who they are as a person. And a lot of people I find out aren't the greatest people, by challenging them and asking them questions and just saying, "Hey dude, like, what did you do? Where do you come from? What is your background?" And a lot of them kind of got the golden spoon and were just handed the positions that they were in, or they like stepped on people to get where they are. And I'm just like, dude, those aren't the people I want to surround myself with. And for me, that's a valuable lesson, is to be able to put myself out there every single time with new people and let myself be vulnerable And that's the key word, is vulnerability, right?
Yep.
Like, you allow yourself to be vulnerable and show them, I'm being vulnerable for you because I want to be your friend. And first and foremost, I would rather be a friend with someone than someone that I'm just trying to pick their brain and get their information from them.
Yep, exactly.
Because that's honestly, that's how you get the real information anyway, right?
Yeah, you got to be genuine, opposed to, it's kind of like the
Absolutely.
LA, mindset of, you talk to people at a bar and they're kind of scanning through like, okay, are you someone who can help my career? If not, then, I'll go to the next person,
You're absolutely right about that. And that's the saddest thing about, in a way, Los Angeles. When I moved out here, because I was in Orange County, people were a little bit more laid back in Orange County, I got to say.
It's a different lifestyle, that's for sure.
It really is. It's definitely
it's a little incestuous, I'll say.
Incestuous. A lot of climbers.
Yep.
A lot of people that really want to make it to the top quickly.
Everyone has a boat.
Exactly, dude. Everybody has something that tries to put themselves above the rest. And I had to learn the hard way. I got hurt by a few people, and I didn't work well with certain people, like oil and water.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, man, it made me who I am today. It's like made me a better person, because I was like, okay, I was willing to be vulnerable. I was willing to put myself out there and give people who I really am, versus like being the fake Jason.
Yep.
And waiting for them to like, hey, you caught my bait. Like, I'm, that's not who I am at all.
Let me put some oil through my hair and get the whole car salesman speech going. No, that's great, man. Like, you're absolutely right there. I mean, I think it's really key that you got to build those genuine relationships, and you can spot someone who's being fake a mile away too. And that's just it. Like, if you want to make a connection with someone, and you can just tell that they're, I don't know, like I've had friends come to visit and they're like, oh yeah, we just hired this new producer or sales rep or whatever, and within 5 minutes of meeting them, you're kind of pulling your friend aside, like, I don't know if you're aware of this, but this person is really freaking sleazy. And a few months later, surprise, surprise, but they get fired because they're doing sketchy shit. But a lot of the time, like, that's just it. Like, if your first impression is like, wow, they're just trying to get something from you, it just makes you shut down and not want to really open up to them. But that's awesome. That's really cool. And yeah, I think it's such a critical thing. Like, I don't think it's easy to find those people who are able to kind of help you, but when you do, it's so valuable to everything that you're doing, in terms of both your career as well as just your outlook on life too. So I think that's great.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
I was just curious. I mean, this is a bit personal, but with your dad and your career, because like this is something that, like, I'll say that my fiance, she had a lot of this with her dad. She wanted to be an artist, and her parents were military background and wanted her to join the Air Force and, all the stuff. And it was definitely a lot of friction for her, and she still kind of gets it now, where she's kind of just starting to get a bit of acceptance, I guess, from her dad. And but it's always been a bit of a struggle, and it's a consistent one I see in a lot of people, is kind of like trying to do something that people mightn't understand and trying to get their approval, or having some kind of friction in their personal life with one of their parents who might want them to take one career path, whereas they want to take another that they mightn't kind of see initially as being a real career. Did you experience that?
Yeah, I did. And
by the way,
there's
I'm
always
quickly
friction.
Say that your dad sounds awesome.
Sure.
So I don't imagine it's too bad, but yeah, I was just kind of curious to see that.
Oh, no. I mean, it's a great question, and it's actually something that's been instrumental for me. Is that he definitely gave me friction, but that friction was a good friction, because it was something that challenged me. And this is something I think, as a final note that I can leave, the listeners with, is that you want people to challenge you, and you want people to put you in a place where you're uncomfortable, and tell you, hey man, are you sure? They're making you question as an individual who you are and your decisions for where you go down the road. And there's definitely many forks in that road where you go, should I go left, or should I go right, or should I go straight? And my dad was that person for me. He was like, are you sure you want to go down that road? Do you think you have the perseverance, is the word, the perseverance to get to that next chapter, or to open up the next door? And even though he didn't believe in me 100% in the beginning, slowly I was able to open up doors within him and show him, hey man, like, I could do this, and take a look at this now. And I love that of being able to say, hey, I could do this now, and he believes in me and says, hey, dude, you could totally do this.
That's awesome.
And it took a lot of time to get to that point in our relationship, and with different people in my life as well, like elitist people too, that have said I couldn't do something, and then when I do it, I'm like, haha, I proved you wrong, man. Like, I busted my ass to get here. And then at certain points, their kind of thoughts of you and their perception of who you are doesn't even matter to you anymore.
Yep.
Like, you're able to just say, hey, whatever. Like, you didn't believe in me, so I kind of wrote you off in my mind a long time ago. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, like, I'm doing my thing now. You've been almost the steroids to my failure and giving me the strength to move forward. And that's what I really can say about that, is like, just use that negativity as your positivity, and then use that as constant elevation.
Yeah, I think that's such a critical thing, like right there. Yeah, I've thought a lot about this recently. Just I've got obviously the Paris talk coming up and a few other things that I'm working on, and it's made me kind of reflect a lot on like what a lot of people kind of run into, and I feel like that's a common human thing. It doesn't need to be with your career; it could be with anything, that you ultimately give the power to the people to doubt you. I mean, it's up to you whether you allow them to have any kind of power over you. It could be like going up to a girl at a bar and saying hi. Like, if they laugh in your face and turn their back on you, it's up to you whether you want to let that affect you your whole life, and look back with this kind of like, I'll never talk to a girl again. Or you can just be like, wow, okay, like, I feel sorry for that person. They must be really stuck up, or they need that themselves to make themselves feel better, whatever it is.
Sure.
But it's the same thing with like everything that everyone goes through, really. It's like no one has any power of you unless you allow them. So when you get those kind of like stuck up people who kind of doubt you, it's up to you whether you want to see it as something like, okay, well, people are doubting me, and maybe they're right, and all the things that can kind of go through your head. Or you can look at it like, fuck it, this is exactly what I need. Now I've got that fire to kind of prove them wrong, or just kind of disregard it altogether. But that's just it. Like, I know some people in my life who, it's funny watching them because they always got to prove people wrong, and they're not negative people, but when they hear something, it kind of ingrains in them, and that's their drive, is to prove that person wrong and show that they can do it. And if that's what works for you, then great. And for me, it's more like, I don't really give a shit, whether someone says I can or can't do something. I'm just going to go and do what I want to do. Either way is a positive mindset. It's when you kind of have those people, when you start collecting all those negative talks that everyone's saying to you, and start thinking like, okay, these are the things that are going to weigh me down and prevent me from moving up, rather than using it as fuel on the fire to kind of be like, awesome, I needed that. Now I can, use that to drive me for the next step.
Yeah, no, definitely, man. And those are all what makes you a character as an individual, and really those are the roadmaps on your face of all the wrinkles and the gray hairs that you collected over the years that make you who you are, and honestly, I'm cool with that. I'm cool with being the wrinkly old man with a lot of like adversity versus the guy that has the smooth face that's never been through anything. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes me the sailor that I am on the high sea, man. I mean, honestly, that's the analogy I always say to my students, is it's like a world full of seas and, crazy waves, and you just got to build your boat very strong to be able to get through that crazy tidal wave,
I like that. That's cool. All right, and I just got a couple more questions, but and again, I kind of love this because I kind of went in with like, a bunch of questions I want to ask, and I've not asked a single one just because we've been going down this path. But it's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it this way. I love it when I get to talk to someone, especially get to know them this way, and learn so much. So I mean, even for me, it's been really valuable. I was just curious, like, it sounds like with DreamWorks, when it did happen, and I do love that fact that you did fire something out and it wasn't instant, and it was something kind of like a boomerang. You throw it out there and then you just go on with your life, and then later that little contribution or that little act that you did comes back in full. And I think that's one that, again, is so critical, because most people, they will only do something if they get that instant gratification, and therefore they're not investing in the big picture. Whereas like if you go out and fire out your reel to 100 places, and you do favors and you do all these things that may or may not work, but it's not with the intent of, I'm only going to do this if I get 100% success rate. It means that, some of them mightn't pay off, and other ones, like, they suddenly start hitting back. And I've had that. I've had so many people I worked with 20 years ago who suddenly now it's like you walk in a room and you're like, oh yeah, I know that guy, or we work together on this, and all those things kind of come back later on, and that's why I think it's so important to be busy and always stay
Yeah.
active.
Hmm.
Do you think that, like, with you and your career, like, you obviously went through a huge learning process and a lot of growth, and then when you're kind of at that point where, like, all right, now I'm gonna unleash myself on the world, um, did you experience or have any self-doubt about, like, ageism, like thinking, well, because you're so over the hill at 26, but no, like, but being 26
Yeah.
or around there, like, do you think that was there any kind of hesitation, or like, oh shit, have I waited too long, and always young people coming in? Because I know it is like a very common thing. I've experienced a lot of people thinking,
Right.
I'm 30, I should just not try because all these young people have got all the jobs.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty good question. I never really heard that question before. For me, I didn't ever let the age affect me. I felt actually like the youngster in the group when I was at DreamWorks, for example. Like I was one of the youngest guys, so it actually didn't bother me whatsoever. But I have heard that from people where they're like, "Hey, I am 30," like in my classes, and they're still studying art and they still want to make a career out of it. And I never ever discourage them. I'm like, "This is great, man! Like anything I can do to help, and if I can create a connection for you, and if I see that person is working as hard as they are, I want to make sure that they have that connection,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm sure you feel the same way too. Is like if you see somebody that's putting every ounce of effort into something, you are like, look at that blue collar like mentality right there. Like this guy's really trying hard. I want to give him everything I can. All of the little Easter eggs that people didn't give me, I want to give those to him so he can, or she, so that they can progress further faster than I did. And that's something that I try to do with all my students and also for my friends that I meet along the way that are struggling. I go, dude, like, this is what you're not doing. I could see it right now because I was right there too.
Mm-hmm.
And you're constantly like analyzing yourself, and then you're analyzing people around you. And that's part of the cool thing about the art culture is we're giving back constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think no matter what age you are, you could be 14, 11 years old to like 60. As long as you're giving it your all and you're pushing forward, I think you can do anything you can possibly do. I mean, just you got to set your mind on it. That's all it comes down to.
Absolutely. And like I've got friends, like one of my buddies, Matt Conway, is a matte painter, working on I cannot remember the name of the Marvel movie right now, Guardians of the Galaxy 2 at the moment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so
That little one.
yeah, that little one. But yeah, I mean, like I always think of him because he's worked on like everything from Avatar to Game of Thrones and everything in between, and he came from, I forget what the hell he's doing, but he was in Vegas doing law or something really freaking, I won't say boring, but obviously not too creative. And then I think he was in his like early 30s and decided I want to be a matte painter, and just kind of like went and did a few courses, and
Yeah.
left with a bit of understanding about composition and perspective, color theory, and was like, all right, like let's give this a shot. And I think that a lot of people don't try just because, again, they have those self-doubts, as things whispering in their ear. I think it's called imposter syndrome, where you're essentially
Exactly.
think you're not worthy, and yeah, like, so a lot of people, they talk themselves out of ever doing something rather than saying, well, as I said before, like, what's the worst that can happen? And so I think of
Right.
him as being someone that, not that old, but I know so many people who are in their 40s, and as long as you are serious about it and give it everything you got, like, you can totally change careers and do what you're passionate about. And it's very common too that most people just kind of, they go through a couple of careers in their lifetime and then finally start thinking, well, what's something I actually really care about? Like, what do I think would be really fun, rather than doing something my whole life that I was told to do or conditioned to do growing up. And
Right. Yeah. That's great.
yeah, so I don't know, like, I definitely think it's just something that we could all learn from, is just the fact that you can never be too old. And at the end of the day, like, actually, I will say that along the way, all the experiences you have, whether it's working at McDonald's or whether it's working as an accountant for 20 years or something before you find what you enjoy, like, it's not like you're starting from scratch. There's a lot of life experiences that you can take and apply to what you're doing that are going to make you stand out a lot more than a 21-year-old coming in from a different, from school or whatever, just because you've learned that responsibility, you've learned to work with people, you've learned to see things through. And even, I think one of the big things that I've only realized the last couple of years that for me has been really valuable has been experience, and more in the sense that I can look at a project and see all the problems that are going to come up before we even start.
Yep.
And I think
Yeah.
I've had that for a very long time, but it's only been the last few years that I've really started to bank on that and realize like that alone is critical. Being able to say, well, we can't do it this way because all these things are going to happen, and we've got to,
Hmm.
this is the way that we should do it, so that way we can have a smooth running project, opposed to late nights and craziness from the get go. And again, like
Yeah.
all of that stuff is things that you learn through life rather than being like, all right, like I learned this in school, now I'm ready to rock. So talent is one thing, but
Yeah.
experience is the
Yes.
other.
Yeah, no, that's so true. It's the same thing for me too. It applies every day with what I do now in feature film. Is we have to come up with like contingency plans all the time and like foresee all the pitfalls that are going to arise with budget and with timing on assignments and hitting deadlines and doing handoffs with our vendors, and
Mm-hmm.
all of that stuff is something I learned on the job, and it's definitely through experience, Alan. Like if I didn't have those years and years behind me, I would never know how to start or where to end.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the cool thing about these types of jobs. They're so competitive, number one, but number two, there's so many different chameleonized ways that you have to adapt yourself to every single day, and how each obstacle comes up, and it will blow up in your face, or it could be something that flows super smooth, and others are just like, wow, I don't even know what I'm looking at. This is completely unknown to you. And that's the exciting part, I think, is that each part of my journey has an unexplored realm, and then a realm that I've been down many times before, and that's definitely leads to the experience part that you were talking
That's
about.
great. And to segue for a moment, but you do a lot of personal work, and
Yeah.
I guess for you, like
Mhm.
how often do you try and like push yourself to do personal work, whether it's just for fun or whether it's a piece that you're trying to see all the way through?
I do it every day. That's something that I've made an obstacle for myself to do, is like make it into something. It's an art habit instead of it being something that I hate doing. It's actually like soothing to me. I actually feel like if I create a new painting, or I do a study, or I create something, with Legos, even still, I still play with Legos. I'm an old man, but I still play with them. I personally find that being creative every single day keeps me inspired. And I love looking at other artists like John Park out there. You know John Park?
No, I don't.
John's one of my buddies that he's also a concept artist. He's on the Avatar team right now.
Right.
And he does amazing digital paintings all the time on Facebook, and posts them up, and it just keeps me inspired. I'm like, dude, this guy just blowing my mind every single
That's so
time.
cool.
Like, how does he do that? So that makes me want to get out there and do that too. And, my friend James Pack, he started Brainstorm School with John, and, I kind of helped get that thing started. And it was just all of us together constantly challenging each other. So you have this kind of epic epicenter that happens by being around all these people. And for me, that's what keeps me going every single day. It makes me want to get out of the bed in the morning, and then start doing a digital painting or start doing a drawing, and keeping my personal IPs going. And I'm working on my own book right now, and I have an amazing person backing me with the book, and so those things get me inspired too. Is like there's other people that are counting on me,
Yep.
not just myself, to create new pieces of art as well. And it's like I'm not accountable for it anymore just by myself. I'm accountable for all the other people that believe in me.
That's the number one
too.
thing, is having accountability. It's such a powerful human trigger that as soon as you kind of put it out there, like, hey, I'm going to do this thing, then it's not you saying, well, should I or shouldn't I? It's like, well, now there are people expecting this, and I've got to get it done. And
Right.
that's like a very key one. I've had people like, one of my friends, he texted me one day, it could be a really big thing about, hey, Alan, I'm going to go out, I'm going to do this thing. And I texted him back like, dude, that's freaking awesome. And he's like, I don't really want a response. I'm just texting you to make myself accountable because now I got to go do it. And I'm like, fuck yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Do it.
I like that too, man. That's like really great to have that support system too. Like you set up these support pillars for yourself in your community, people that you could surround yourself with you and get inspired from. Like my friend Jonathan Ryder is one of those guys. Like when we were in college, we looked out for each other all the way through school. And then once we graduated, we're like, hey, we should do a project together. We collaborated so well in school. Let's keep going. And my buddy Tim Kaylock, who's an animator, but he does amazing art, and he's a really good, storyteller. So those are the people I want to like absorb. I want to like be like Highlander and like cut off their heads and absorb all their energy, and we all do that to each other. And it's just one of those great things about being friends with someone that can inspire you, is like only surround yourself with people in your circumference that will bring you to the next
Yep.
level, that will help you keep hitting new notches and, keep you moving forward in a positive upwards way. And then every now and then you'll get snagged on something, but that's okay. You'll pick yourself right back up again and start pushing harder. And that's something that we learn every single day, is like those little challenges are what make us who we are.
Yeah, I think that's really critical. I kind of mentioned it before, but like, I think it's very common for a lot of people to be like the best in their circle, and they kind of love the fact that all their friends like give them a little bit of praise, like, oh, you're so good, this person's so talented. And I was saying before how that's not the circle you want to be in. You want to be in that circle where everyone's going to pull you up, rather than you being like, yeah, I'm the cream of the crop in terms of like my inner circle, and you want to be one that's instead at the very bottom, and therefore you've got to work your way up again. And yeah, because a lot of people just get comfortable being like, all right, yeah, I'm the best out of my friends, and therefore I don't need to try anymore. I don't need to grow. And that's kind of like where your experience and skills kind of start to decline.
That's true. No, absolutely.
And yeah, I had a feeling you would say every day, because I think Nathan Fowkes actually said the same thing, that like every day he tries to. Actually, it was Mike Blum. But yeah, like every day trying to do a little bit of artwork, and I think that you're right. It's really critical to have that. For you, where do you find the time, like in between work and everything else, to do something personal?
I find a time whenever, like, say for example, I am busting my ass on an assignment, and like I'm like, fuck, I don't have time to do this. Sometimes just doing the artwork for my job keeps me busy, and it lets me be creative. So in a way, it's like the process is great, and I'm learning from that. So sometimes I'll have to skip personal art because of deadlines. But most of the time I'll say, hey, let me just set an hour aside in the morning when I first get to work and just bust out a painting. And it might be a sketch, and it might be something a little bit more finished. I can pick it up the next day and keep working on it. And then like 2 or 3 days later, I can post it up. You know what I mean? Another way I do it is like through travel. Like my wife and I, we like to travel a lot. We're going to obviously be going to Paris soon, but we went to Asia, the last couple of years. We went to Korea, and we went to Hong Kong, and all through China, like Shanghai and like Southwest China, Yunnan province. And for me, travel and photography is just as inspiring as drawing and painting. So it's just a different artistic tool that I'm utilizing to like become more creative. So, I buy tons of different lenses and try different lenses out, and I'm really into like full frame photography. So I'm studying what the camera really does and trying to put that back into my artwork. And that's something that I don't think enough artists do, is like, yeah, they take pictures on their iPhones, but they're not like buying a real physical camera and like learning what the camera does. Like, what does a 35 millimeter lens look like versus a 200? And
what makes
like,
you a
what is the
creeper?
depth of field?
And
exactly.
What makes you look?
One's a creeper.
What makes you looking through people's windows with a 200mm lens, and the other one, you can get some beautiful mid-range shots. But yeah, I mean, you kind of picked that up from doing all your early on doing line drawing, doing sculpting, doing ceramics, like doing all these other things. Again, like even I'm guessing learning biology and like a lot of other subjects that weren't directly related, they all aid to making you a better artist or whatever you're trying to do. And that's just it. Like whether you're playing with Lego or whether you're going out and doing photography, like all of these are artistic, and at the same time, they're things that are going to help you be a better artist in the long run.
Absolutely. No, completely. I second that.
That's cool. And I guess like just a couple more questions, but do you have any kind of personal habits or rituals that you have that, as you mentioned, kind of like getting to work early or doing 1 hour in the morning for your personal work, but do you have anything that you kind of think really aids you in either being as productive as you can or really kind of staying inspired?
Yeah, I think watching a lot of film. I'm a film junkie, and like one of my favorite filmmakers is Akira Kurosawa, and I watch his movies over and over again. Like pretty much every month I watch one of his movies again, like Hidden Fortress or Ron or any of his films, that in a way they've become the way I see cinematography in my day-to-day life. Like I constantly have almost like an artistic filter on my eyes. So when I look at something, I'm thinking about how to frame it or compose it or light it. And that's what helps me with my art, is like being very psychoanalytical about how I approach the world. It's kind of ruined some things for me, though, to be perfectly honest with you. Like I can enjoy like a moment sitting down sometimes at the beach, or having a cafe moment with my wife. Like sometimes I'm thinking about art too much, so then I have this I wear different hats at different times. Like sometimes I'm like, okay, let me just be Jason for a second and like stop thinking about art. And it's hard to do sometimes, but I can do it.
Yep.
And because I'm sure you agree with me on this, Alan, you've worked on a lot of different properties, and you have to constantly try to find a way to be inventive and creative. And that's something that becomes the bedrock of who you are as a person in a way. But also, I never forget who I am as a person on the inside. I'm still like a giant big kid at heart, like a 16-year-old on the inside. So I never let that. I don't want to get jaded. That's the word. I don't want to get jaded, and I don't want to wear myself out on something. So I allow myself some time to recoup and refresh. So that's something I have to do every single day. That's something I should pass on as advice to everybody: is take time for yourself to go for a walk, listen to nature and just be still for a second, because this world is so crazy. There's so much going on all the time.
I'm going to take that advice because, I think you're right. Like, it's very easy to fall in that rut of working 24/7, and it's usually, it's kind of one of those things like you could spend all day working on something, trying to figure out how the hell am I going to do it, or even visually just not really getting quite what you're going for, and then taking a break or going to sleep, and you wake up in the middle of the night, and you're like, I got it, I figured it out, and you're on your phone like writing it down. I've gotten really good at writing in the dark because I'm just there, pen and paper, like jotting down ideas. But yeah, it's so critical to step away, and people don't do that enough.
It is. No, definitely. You got to get some perspective, like literally get some perspective.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna leave it there because
okay, bud.
Yeah, I really want to pick your brain about a lot of the commercial projects you've done, but I think maybe we'll save it for round 2, and maybe we can do it over a couple of beers in Paris or something.
That'd be awesome, man. I'd love that. It'd be cool to get a chance to put a name with the face.
Yeah, man, I'm looking forward to it. I got to say, like, I'm really looking forward to this trip. I've mentioned it before, but like, I think that it's really cool that everyone is bringing their partners this trip is one thing, but then everyone going are just fucking cool people. Like, some of you guys, like, I've done a few podcasts with a few of the speakers that I haven't met yet, like yourself, and it's been really great for me, actually, because now I feel like I know everyone. But on top of that, like, everyone I do know, there's like Ash Thorpe is a really amazing designer, and he pushes himself all the time. He's doing crazy amounts of work on top of everything else he's doing. But for me, like, I've known him for years, and actually, oddly enough, we've never met. We've done a bunch of podcasts together. I was on his and vice versa. But he's a super genuine guy, and just,
That's
and
dope.
Again, like, you definitely remind me of him in that sense that, like, you've got these guys who are amazing amount of talent, but at the same time, very down to earth, very approachable, a lot of great insights into both life as well as work, and stepping the fuck away from computers too is important. For
sure.
Yeah, everyone going, it's just like, I'm really psyched about this trip. What's your talk going to be on?
I'm doing it's kind of a kind of an interesting one. I'm doing mine on color and light for visual storytelling. So I'm going to break down like the basics of color and light, the power of light in visual storytelling, and then color scripting and color grading. So I'm going to talk a little bit about all those key points, and then hopefully, if I do have time, I'll try to do a demo.
That's cool. That's really cool. I'm looking forward to checking that out. And
Thanks, man.
You've got a bunch of courses on Gumroad as well, which I'll leave links to.
Oh, thanks,
yeah,
man.
And yeah, because I think I had a quick look through them, and it looks really cool. I mean, again, just really great resources to kind of get to look over your shoulder a little bit about your process and how you work. So I think that's really cool.
I appreciate it. It's been really great talking to you, man. I feel inspired just talking to you because I know I could feel your creativity through like the internet, so to say. You have a really good mentality about life, and you're a very forward thinker. And I'd love to like continue our connection, man, and just keep chatting with you in the future.
Thanks, man. No, I really appreciate it. And yeah, definitely when we get to Paris, we'll have a couple of drinks and catch up for sure.
That's a plan.
Cool, man. All right, so I hope you enjoyed that. I found that to be really inspiring. Again, I want to thank Jason for taking time to do this episode. I just found that a lot of his insights were really great, and it's the fact that he's managed to take his time and really perfect his art, and then kind of dove into the professional field after that. And putting in the work up front, on the front end, definitely pays off in the long run, rather than kind of just like diving in messily and going about it. So, I think that in a way it really reflects on his career, the fact that he really has dedicated himself always to his art. And then when it came time to kind of dive into the professional commercial side of his career, he was able to shoot right up there right away just because he'd managed to prepare himself in such a manner, first of all. So I found that really great. That being said, next episode is going to be another one. It's going to be with my brother from another mother, Dennis Millones, and he's from Bethesda and has worked on Fallout 4, Skyrim, a lot of crazy stuff. Super talented ZBrush modeler, does a lot of hard surface work. Really talented guy. He's a senior character artist, and it was really inspiring talking to him just because you can just tell how motivated he is. Just listen to him and his dedication to his art, dedication to his family, and dedication to his career. It's been really amazing, really inspiring. I've known Dennis for a long time, and it was really cool just to kind of shoot the shit. We had a lot of fun. There was so many times I had to kind of hold back because I'm like, I'd have to edit a lot of stuff out if we kind of acted like ourselves, but it was great. Like, it was really cool, and that episode is coming up next, to episode 76. Also, pretty much right about now, I'm going to be opening up doors for the FXTD mentorship very soon anyway, and I'm really psyched about that too. It's been a long time coming. I've gotten so many emails about this. This is ridiculous. So I'm kind of really psyched about finally being ready to do this again. And we've been working a lot on it. I'm not going to talk about it just yet, but get ready. A lot of people have been inquiring, so if you're not on the insiders list, because it's really the only way to find out about it, go to www.allanmckay.com/inside to check it out there, and you'll be able to get lots of great information, lots of free content. Everything's free, but at the same time, I will be letting everyone on that list know about the FXTD mentorship before anyone else. Just a heads up for anyone who doesn't know what the mentorship is. It's a mentorship I open up doors for, usually for like a week, maybe 2 at most, once a year. And that's where I personally mentor everyone for the entire year. So this is very intimate. It's a very close-knit group of people. I do weekly reviews and webinars and really push you, work on your work, help you do your work, I should say, as well as I teach scripting, effects, real shots. Like, we do so much, it's ridiculous. There's I think 750 hours of training in there. You don't have to do it all, but it's pretty nuts, and I'm constantly adding more to it. So I really feel like everyone who's in there, it's like a brotherhood and sisterhood. We've got a pretty good balance of men and women in the course, which I love. I love the fact that we have that. So it's going to be really awesome. That's going to be coming up soon. Last chance to find out about it if you would go to allanmckay.com/inside. Lastly, you can check out the show notes for this episode at allanmckay.com/75. So 75. Okay, so that's it for now. Rock on.